History is full of famous rebellions. But what if I told you one of the most important labor uprisings in European history was started by a group of women whose story has been almost completely erased? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the forgotten silk rebels of Lyon. Imagine Lyon in the early 1800s. It's the glittering capital of Europe's silk trade, producing luxurious fabrics for aristocrats and royalty all over the world. But behind this glamour was a hidden, brutal reality. The city's magnificent silk industry ran on the backs of thousands of women. They were the spinners, the warpers, the finishers, the invisible workforce performing crucial steps in the silk-making process. They worked in cramped, poorly lit workshops, often from their own homes, for grueling hours, while the male weavers, known as the knots, operated the large looms. The women prepared every single thread. Their work was intricate, skilled, and absolutely essential. Yet, they were treated as anything but. They earned a pittance, often less than half of what their male counterparts made. This wasn't just low pay. It was systemic exploitation. Factory owners and merchants would deduct costs for tools, for the thread itself, and even for supposed damage to the materials. A tiny mistake could wipe out a week's wages. These women were trapped in a cycle of poverty, working tirelessly just to keep their families from starving, while the merchants who sold their handiwork grew fabulously wealthy. By the early 1830s, the situation was a powder keg waiting for a spark. The global market for silk was volatile, and when prices dropped, the factory owners didn't sacrifice their own lavish profits. Instead, they slashed the wages of their workers, and the women, being the lowest paid and most vulnerable, were always the first and hardest hit. Imagine watching your already meager income shrink, knowing your children might go hungry, while the men who control your livelihood continue to live in luxury. The anger simmering in the narrow, winding streets of Lyon's working-class neighborhoods was reaching a boiling point. But this is where the story takes a radical turn. In an era when women were expected to be silent and submissive, a few brave souls decided they had had enough. They began to organize in secret. Picture this. Under the cloak of darkness, small groups of female silk workers would gather in hidden courtyards or the back rooms of dimly lit taverns. These weren't political theorists or seasoned activists. They were mothers, daughters, and wives who were simply fed up with being invisible and exploited. They whispered plans, shared grievances, and built a network of solidarity. The very act of them meeting like this, planning collective action without the leadership of men, was revolutionary. They were risking everything: their jobs, their reputations, and their safety. And then, in the spring of 1834, they made their move. It started not with a loud declaration, but with a quiet, coordinated refusal. Across Lyon, women in workshop after workshop simply stopped working. They refused to prepare the silk threads. At first, the factory owners probably scoffed, but soon the reality hit them. Without the women's labor, the entire silk production chain ground to a halt. The looms of the male knots fell silent, because there was no thread to weave. The city's economic engine, its pride and joy, was This bold act of defiance by the women was the spark that ignited the flame. Seeing their courage and the immediate impact of their strike, the male knots were inspired to join them. What began as a women's work stoppage escalated into a citywide uprising, the Second Great Knot Revolt. The workers weren't just demanding better pay anymore. They were demanding dignity and the right to a fair wage. Live working or die fighting became their rallying cry. The response from the authorities was swift and brutal. The French government, fearing a full-blown revolution, sent in thousands of soldiers. The working-class districts of Lyon transformed into a war zone. The people, men and women side by side, tore up paving stones to build barricades. For 6 bloody days, the streets of Lyon ran with cannon fire and musket shots. The workers fought with incredible bravery, but they were no match for a professional army. The revolt was violently crushed. In the aftermath, the official story was written. History books and government reports detailed the Knot Revolt, crediting the male weavers for the uprising, the crucial role of the women who started it all. It was almost completely erased. Why? Because acknowledging that women had organized and led such a powerful movement was too radical for the time. It challenged the entire social order, which dictated that women belonged in the home, not on the barricades. Many of the female organizers were arrested, blacklisted from the industry, and faded into obscurity. Their names and stories lost, but their legacy didn't die. Though the revolt was crushed, it sent shockwaves across Europe. It became a foundational story for the emerging labor rights movements, fueling debates about minimum wages, worker exploitation, and social justice. And crucially, it planted a seed for the fight for gender equality, demonstrating that women could be powerful agents of change. Today, thanks to the tireless work of historians, we are finally rediscovering the truth. We are piecing together the stories of these incredible silk rebels who dared to shut down a city to demand their worth. Their fight reminds us that so many of the rights we take for granted were won through immense struggle, and that history is full of unsung heroes whose voices deserve to be heard. So the next time you think of a great historical rebellion, remember the forgotten women of Lyon. They prove that even the most marginalized people, when united, can challenge the most powerful systems. Their story isn't just about silk. It's about dignity, courage, and the enduring fight for justice. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as powerful as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more hidden histories. Let me know in the comments what other forgotten stories you think we should cover. See you next time.